Hi again, welcome back to Mel's Clever Craft. So today we're going to be making another flower wreath, but we're going to be using a square wreath frame instead of the regular round frame, and we're going to be making the Jamaican flag. So pretty much use your square frame like you use the round frame to make another Jamaican flag wreath. Our supplies are going to be pretty much the same, except we're going to be using again the square frame instead of the round frame. So to get started, we're going to be making our petals. So we're starting with the green that was already pre-cut into 10 by 10 strips. We have finished edge at top, finish at bottom, and then we're going to be moving the bottom right over to the top left, and then we're going to scrunch it down the middle. And this is going to be creating that Dean Michael designed pointed petal daisy wreath or daisy petal. And as I told you, this I think is my favorite petal to use. I guess maybe because the petal comes out really straight, they don't really curve, and I like how they look. So I saw Trudy do this where she made her petals first, of course, and secured them using the zip ties, and then at the back of the petals she attached another zip tie, and this kind of lessened her petals possibly getting shifted when she put them on the frame, so they don't look slanted. I was gonna try that, so I started off trying that, and that's why here I preformed this petal, added the zip tie onto the front, and then I was thinking, but I don't think I want to use so many zip ties, so I probably won't be using this technique as much. So these are the yellow petals. These are not the pointed petals, but I guess you can call them the pinwheel petals, which is like making a pointed daisy petal and cutting it in half using the wood burner. And these are going to be the yellow stripe or the yellow X that's in the Jamaican flag. So again, I'm just gonna try to this technique, and I used it for the first 4 petals to see if it would help me to keep them a bit more straight on the frame, and you'll see a little bit later what that looks like. But I didn't really think it did much because my petals were still shifting, and I just let them stay there until I added more petals to keep them in place. So that was the first petal for the yellow, and then I'll just show you again what made the second. So again, these were pre-cut, and if you want to know how to make these pinwheel petals, you can refer to my other Jamaican flag wreath video. So here we have the square frame, and you see I set it up similar to what I did for the round frame, and I put the canvas mesh in the middle because I'm going to turn this into a square flower. And then I'm just trying to figure out what direction I would like the edges of the petals to turn. So I think I pretty much came down to I want them to turn outwards. And then, as I said, I added that extra zip tie on the back with the hopes that, okay, when I try to secure it to the frame, it would stay better in place. But you're gonna see the result of that. So instead of starting out on the outer frame, I'm gonna start on the second ring of that wreath frame. Instead of starting on the outermost one, I'm gonna start on the second one and work my way in. So this frame, instead of having 4 rings, it only has 3, as you can see. So there goes my first petal. And I like to start my wreath frames with the yellow in the middle because it kind of gives me guidance of how to place the green and the black petals. So this kind of sets up my parameters. So that's the first petal, and then I'm gonna add the second petal just to set up that parameter, and then I'll just speed up for the rest of those petal additions around the first perimeter. So yeah, I'm securing it as tight as I can in the corner of that frame, but it didn't seem as secure. But I'll still try again and see how best that works out. So I try to keep the finished edges for these petals on top, and that helps to determine also what direction I'm gonna place the petals in. So just add in the other outer petal that will start the outline of how I'm gonna place the other petals on this frame. So I think it looks a bit intimidating using a square frame, but when you start using it, it's not too much of a challenge. And there are other things, of course, you can do with this petal, but I just wanted to make that Jamaican flag as it was requested. Someone had the square frame and they wanted to know how to use it to make this. So right, so I did that, and then now we're gonna get to adding the green one. So as I said, I pre-made a first green petal, but I didn't feel like I want to use up so many of my zip ties. So instead I decided, okay, I'll just make my petals and attach them as I go. So again, we're using the Dean Michaels design pointed daisy petal, and then I'm just gonna attach it to the wreath frame using the zip ties. So these zip ties that I'm using, as you can see, they're color coordinated. That was not planned. I just happened to need zip ties, buy them, and I saw that they were Jamaican colors and I was so excited. These ones are 4 inches, so the yellow, the green, and the black, they're 4 inches. But at some point you're gonna see me using some 8-inch zip ties. So like here, I'm using 8-inch zip ties. These zip ties I purchased from Amazon, and I like to use them on the outermost part of my wreath because my mesh is a 5-count mesh, which is smaller than the 7-count mesh, and the 8-inch zip ties can't really go through them. So I'll save the smaller zip ties for the inner part of the wreath. So securing this first green petal, and then after I secured it, I realized it's kind of crooked. So I'm just gonna keep going and adding the petal, but yeah, I'm just trying to work there and see how best I can straighten it, which it didn't happen to get straightened. And also while I'm doing that, I'm trying to keep the yellow over the green. So making the petal again, finish edge at top, finish at bottom, bottom right over top left, and then scrunch in the middle, form your petal, and then you're gonna attach it to the frame. So for this, I'm gonna have 4 green petals on the corners, so the top and the bottom of the wreath, and this is where I did the first one wrong. So I'm attaching it right now to the bar, and then as I was going along, I realized I probably shouldn't have done that, because when you do that, you can't really get the petal to move as you would think you'd want it to reposition or better position those petals. So going forward, for the other 3 corners, I didn't bother, or other 3 sides of this frame, I didn't bother to try to attach anything to that bar. So right now I have 3 petals attached, and all 3 of them look crooked to me. So what I'm pretty much gonna do is use an additional zip tie, go in kind of the opposite direction of where I put the first one, and use that to help straighten up the petals. Right, so this is also another way that you can use, and this is not just restricted to a square wreath frame. You can use it on any wreath frame to help straighten your petals if you feel like they're leaning towards one side leaning too much left or too much right. So I'm just gonna do that for all the 3 green petals, right? And then attach, and then I'm just going around and attaching all my petals. So as I said, I did 4 of the green on the outer sides, and also I'm going to be doing 4 black on the outer side as well. And then after I did all the outer petals, I'm just going to go ahead and so see, I attached the last one on the outer part, and I try to be mindful of pulling the yellow forward, so making sure the yellow is always on top of those petals so that it can shine better. And then I want my finished edges on my petals to show, so I also put the finished edges on top. And again, with poly burlap, it does ravel. Even if you use a wood burner, it will still ravel. So you want to minimize how much you touch it or how much you manipulate it. So you see me here trying to reposition the petals, but as I go along, I also try to place the petals in such a way that I don't have to go back and try to put the finished edge on top. All right, so now I'm just gonna add the yellow zip ties on this frame. So I'm doing the mesh. So the only part that has petals is the second frame. I'm not going to attach anything onto the outer frame or onto the inner frame. I'm going to come in a little bit from the inner frame onto the mesh and start attaching. So I'm going around the perimeter again, and then I'm going to do all 4 of those petals again for the yellow X in the middle or the gold X in the middle. And then I'll go along afterwards and start placing all the zip ties. So that's 1 petal down, and when I place these petals in the corner on the plastic canvas mesh, there may be about a 1/4 inch inwards from the edge of the canvas mesh. So that's 1 down, and now I have 3 more to go. So here's my other one. And as always, whenever you're cutting these, if you want these pinwheels to be facing opposite direction, you have to take that into consideration when you're cutting them, because I cut way more than I needed because I wasn't paying attention while I was cutting them with the wood burner. So I had so many of one side facing type of pinwheel petal, and I didn't want that. I want them to be on opposite sides. So here I go, I'm adding another petal to the corner. And again, I say I like to add the petals for the X's first, because they kind of give me some border to work with for the other 2 colors that will be going on this wreath. And the Jamaican flag I think is one of the easiest flags to draw. So turning this into a wreath is so fun, and I think it is so easy because it's an X with 2 colors on the outer side. So now I'm just gonna try to figure out how to center all these yellows in it. So I'm just gonna draw an X through the canvas mesh, and this will give me some outline of where I'm going to be placing all those zip ties beforehand for the yellow, and then subsequently the green and the black zip ties, and then their petals. So just making an X, and I just find this so much easier to work with. When I was working with the circular wreath frame, it wasn't so... you probably wouldn't need to do it, but I think it could still also be helpful when you're working with the circular wreath frame, if you just want to make sure you have it right into the center. So I'm just gonna go through and, as I said, add the ones in the perimeter first, and then I'll go through and then add all the zip ties. And you want to try and make these as even as possible, because that also helps with the spacing and makes it look more visually appealing when they're more evenly spaced. Of course, it's not going to be perfect. Nothing in life is perfect, but you just want to get them as symmetrical as possible. And also, while you're placing your petals, try and position them as best as you can and as straight as you can before they're set, because once they're secured in those zip ties, it's kind of hard to get them to straighten up. Okay, you'd probably have to remove them from that zip tie, so cut off the zip tie and reinstall a new zip tie if you want to straighten them up. So try and straighten them up as best as you can, and that really helps. All right, so that's third inner petal to go. And then see, I'm just adding all the zip ties for the yellow going in, and then I'm just going to attach all the yellows for this wreath. And on each side I have about 6 of the yellow petals going down the center. Probably did not need so many, but then again, I cut so many, so it's like, you know what, let me just use them. Probably I could have gotten away with 5 and they would still be fine in terms of spacing. And then I'm just gonna go around and add the greens and add the blacks as well. So when I started the second row of the green, I realized, yeah, I probably needed to add an extra. So I added 3 at first, and then I realized I had space underneath the yellow, so I had to go back and add extra zip ties. So this is the first green that was completed, and you see me moving away the yellow. And again, you want to minimize how much you manipulate this thing, but see me moving away the yellow. I'm trying to look behind here because I think I probably could have added another zip tie, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So instead of having just 3 petals on the second row, I ended up having 4 as well. So 4 on the first, 4 on the second, then 3, then I think 2, and then 1 for both the green and the black. So the green and the black would have the same amount because this is a square frame, not a rectangular frame. So they have the same amount of petals on each side. All right, so you see me pulling at it, and I'm pulling at it, but then everybody does stuff differently, and some may pull it and pull too much, and then you have a lot of fraying and raveling of your poly burlap. So again, you want to be very careful of how you handle it. Don't handle too much, be as gentle as you can, and that would lessen the fraying, along with you using a wood burner to cut the poly burlap. So you see me, I just used the scissors. If your eye actually caught that, I was using the scissors to cut stray fraying pieces of poly burlap that was coming through. And then after, you'll see 1 and 2 strays, and you can just use whether your scissors, or I'm using this tool to cut it off, any type of sharp device. And then you want to manipulate it so that the yellow is coming through, because of course the yellow is not on the flag itself. You can see the yellow clearly different from the black and the green. And then this center, again, I made a Perler bead center. My husband suggested that I should, for this square frame, I should have made a Jamaica flag using Perler beads. Not Jamaica flag, I'm sorry, a Jamaica map using Perler beads. So that's what I did. But the map I made was much smaller than the center. So I was like, you know what? I don't feel like doing another one just yet, and I don't want the one I made to go to waste. So instead, I'll just put it on this backing. So that's what I did. I put it onto this foam disc that I had previously wrapped for a different project. I wrapped it in black. I was like, let me just use this, and I secured the Perler bead center onto that felt wrapped piece of foam disc using E6000. and then I just put some weight on it, left it for a few hours, and then I came back, and now I'm attaching it to the center. I'm thinking because the edges of it is not so neat when I was putting the felt on there, I may consider wrapping it with some Jamaican themed color rope that I've used before, but we'll see. But again, this is my project, this is not something to be sold, it's my project, so I can just let it hang out for a little bit until I wrap my brain around what exactly I'm trying to do. And this Jamaican map I'm so excited about, because I definitely tried to mimic and delineate the parishes. So we have 14 parishes in Jamaica, and that's what the yellow lines are doing. They're cutting up the country into 14 parishes. Kingston is the smallest parish, and that would be on the southeast side. So that small area where you see yellow and you can see a few black dots, that's pretty much Kingston right there. Really interesting to get it with Perler beads, because the Perler beads, of course, it's on a grid. But I was really excited about how this came out. I'm looking forward to doing bigger maps to put in bigger centers. So attach these using as you can see, chenille stems, and just put it there and twist it, and then yep, that's pretty much my center. So this is your Jamaican flag on a Dollar Tree square frame, and I really like it, and I like for you to just comment and just subscribe if you really like this video, and then check out my other videos on my channel. Of course, I have another Jamaican flag there, I have a Nigerian flag, I have other videos, so just check them out. And again, thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.